Welcome to Mamahood After Trauma, where we stop pretending and heal out loud. I'm Emily Cleghorn, trauma survivor, cycle breaker, and mama rebuilding from the inside out. If you're ready to break cycles, trust yourself again, and rise without shame, you're in the right place. Let's go. Before we dive in, mama, if you're a mama healing from trauma and trying to parent differently, but you're not sure what support or next step is right for you, I totally understand. And that's why I've created something to help. Take my free Find Your Next Step to Calm and Healing quiz to discover where you are in your healing journey and what your next best step looks like. You'll find the link in the show notes below. Hello, Mama, and welcome to this episode of the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. I am thrilled that you have taken some time out of your busy mama schedule to tune in and listen to our conversation today. Today, we are honored to be joined by Ranae. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emily. I am so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation
yeah,
today.
excited to talk. So am I. So am I.
Yeah, so let's dive in. And if you could share a little bit of your story and how you came to be speaking into this space.
All right. Yeah, my name is Ranae Van Roekel, and I'm from Minnesota originally in the United States, and grew up in a small community in Southwest Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of community where everybody knows everybody and your parents know what you did before you got home. Um, Again, small town, 500 people. I am a mom of two wonderful sons, a grandmother, a wife, and yeah, and I guess what we're talking about today is my trauma and where that comes into play. I was sexually abused as a I was not yet an adult. I was 10 years old. And it was something that I never took care of. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, I think, what we're going to talk about today, Emily.
Yeah. So can you share a little bit more of what you're comfortable with sharing of
Sure.
your journey and how you navigated post trauma? Because I think the time in which your trauma happened, it there weren't the attitude around it was different.
Oh, most certainly. Most certainly. Okay. Let me get into that a little bit here. Sometimes it takes me a little bit to get into my story, as your listeners will hear. But again, growing up in that small community, Emily, um, I was abused in the 70s. I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in a time frame when people didn't talk about trauma of any kind, really, but especially things like sexual abuse, sexual
Mm-hmm.
trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in an area, and I do not think this, I want to state this before I say it, but where people actually would think the girl or the woman was bad in a situation like I suffered through
Mm-hmm.
instead of the perpetrators. And so my mom, who was a great mom, if we're talking about mamahood here, she's a good mom. But what she told me after I got home was that we needed to not talk about this and that people would think I was bad and not the people who did it to me. So that's really the connotation that I lived with
Mm-hmm.
throughout my life, did not address it and did not talk about it again until I was actually in my 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the situation itself, reared its ugly head in many different ways. And one of the items that it reared its head with was I made a very poor choice and ended up incarcerated. I committed a crime when I was in my early to mid 40s, And that crime led me to be incarcerated in federal prison here in the US for 36 months. I was sentenced to 51. I got out early because of the FSA, the First Step Act. But again, not taking care of my trauma, not taking care of myself, not addressing what needed to be addressed, led me to those choices and led me to be incarcerated. And again, I made the choices. I did
Hmm.
it. I take full responsibility for those things. But it really just goes to show that we need to address trauma. And if we can find someone to help us, we need to look for that person.
Hmm.
Um, so that's kind of the beginning of my story and the end of it. And there's a lot of stuff that happened in between. Where do you want me to go, Emily?
So would you say that becoming incarcerated was your wake up call that you had some work to do?
Definitely, Emily. But I think what really was my wake up call is one morning I woke up and I knew the choices I was making, the choices that, were being made were not good.
Hmm.
And that morning I woke up, I looked at myself in the mirror, and I knew I had two choices that day. It was either use the gun that was in the closet, and for anyone out there who has contemplated suicide, when you get to that point, you really, you feel like there is no hope, and you're so angry, and you just want the hurt to go away.
Hmm.
Or I could come clean, basically turn myself in. And the reason that I chose, and I know firmly that this is the reason I chose this path, was because of the fact that I was a mom to two wonderful boys.
Hmm.
And I did not want them to not know the true story.
Hmm.
And so I put myself as a mother first,
Hmm.
and I turned myself in. And so that was really the turning point of when I realized how devastating my trauma was.
Hmm.
And that was the start of my healing. Um, I tried to turn myself into my county attorney, who I knew I worked on some groups with, and he told me to get myself a lawyer, and that led to me being charged federally. So
So what's your healing journey been like since that day?
since that day, I think that I started healing almost immediately, but I didn't do the work. And I know that that sounds weird, but I knew that I needed to find a way to address what had happened to me.
Hmm.
And I didn't know at that point if I was bad. I still thought in my heart that I was bad. That is what I
Hmm.
had been told. Or anyway, that's what I heard. That isn't what
Hmm.
she said, but that is what my heart heard and what my brain processed.
Hmm.
And um but when I really started healing was the day that I turned myself into prison. So I was never arrested. I was never indicted. I never had handcuffs on. I was never in a cell, which is just a strange process in the whole world of prison and incarceration. But I was given a date that I needed to turn myself into a federal facility, and I did that in Waseca, Minnesota. And that day was the realization of the fact that the only person that could heal me and the only person that I really needed to heal was me. I could blame other people, I could do other things, but I was the person who, made the choices to commit the crime, and I was the person who didn't heal myself. And so being incarcerated, being responsible for only me for the first time in my life, gave me the opportunity to really look within. And I had a great therapist in prison, and she made me accountable and she made me do the work. In fact, the first time that I met with her, um, we talked about what was going on, different things. She had read my PSR, which is a pre-sentencing report, and it basically tells other people your basic whole life history when
Hmm.
you're going into prison. And she told me that she thought she could help me, but I would need to be the person to talk and to do it, and that this was an opportunity in my life to take care of myself.
Mhm.
And I left. I came back the next time and she asked me what my decision was, and I kind of iffed and awed about it. And she said, "Here's your choice. I can give you to someone else and you can sit and do crossword puzzles while you're in prison, or you can come here, 2 times a week and we can really help you heal." And she told me to leave and come back with an answer the next time. So I
Mhm.
did, and that's when my healing journey started, Emily. I found out that I was the only person who could do the work and the only person who could, um, basically be accountable to me. And that was
Mhm.
me. So,
Yeah, so what message would you like the mama listening who is struggling with her life circumstances and feeling that feeling of hopelessness, or like it's never going to get better? It's What would you like to say to her?
well, Emily, since those days, and that was actually, so I got out of, um, the federal facility I was in on May 1st of 2020, right during COVID. And so I've been out for almost 6 years.
Mhm.
And during that time, I've started a company called Connecting to Cope. And I thought of that while I was in prison, actually. Connecting to Cope is named after my dog. And he is like my person and the person that helps me. And since that time, and while being incarcerated, I guess what I would like that person to know is that nothing is hopeless,
Mhm.
and that there is somebody who can help you, and you just need to find someone that you trust. And you don't have to tell them your whole life story right away. You just need to go to that person and tell them that you indeed need help, and that is the beginning of your journey, and that the only person who can do that for you is you. And I've learned so much since I have started talking about my trauma. And I talk to
Mhm.
people who have been incarcerated, yes, but I also talk to so many people who have not been, who have just suffered trauma. And I know that your podcast is aimed at, mothers who have had some kind of traumatic experience in their life. And so many of us have. So
Mhm.
many go unaddressed. And that can add more challenges to motherhood than are already there.
Yeah.
And I was that mama. I just want to
Mhm.
tell you that. I was that mama. My boys are 31 and 33 now, which makes me feel really old. but but they are now dads of their own. I now have grandchildren, and I look at them with their children and how they act towards them. And I am so grateful that they already address their trauma as dads. I don't, and I look at their wives and they go to therapy and they talk about things and how much more balanced they
Mhm.
are with their kids. And I will tell you, you can be a mom. I am living proof, and raise great children and not get your trauma addressed. But my life would have been so much easier.
Mhm.
My boys say they would not be as resilient as they are if I had. And truly, and we talk about that frequently. I'm like, was I a bad mom? The word bad really resonates with me because of what my mom said to me. And they would
Mhm.
both tell me absolutely not. But now as adults, when they look back, they can see some of my struggles that I dealt with.
Mhm.
And so I guess my advice to anybody out there who is a young mom or is a young woman or a young man, thinking of becoming a parent, that if it's possible, um, if you can address that trauma, while or during that time of your life, it's going to make it much more enjoyable for you and for your
Mhm.
children. But I also don't want you to beat yourself up about it if you are in it and have not addressed it. There are so
Yeah.
many things you can do. Find some healthy coping skills, do some good things with your children, and take some time for self-care. Those are all things that are going to, start that process off for you.
Yeah.
And again, address it. If you can find someone you trust, if you can
Hmm.
find someone to talk to, find a good therapist, find a peer advocate, sign on to Connecting to Cope and send me an email. I'd be happy to talk to you and tell you, some of the challenges that I faced and some of the things I see with people that I talk to on a daily basis. So that's kind of where I am.
Yeah. So I'm curious, could you tell us a little bit about Connecting to Cope?
Sure. When I was in prison, I made a deal with myself and with God, which I know we're not supposed to do. And I don't know who out there is a Christian or believes in that. We all have our own beliefs, and I respect all of them. But I made that deal, which was not a good, not a good thing. But if he would stay with me through my incarceration, I would try to help people and hopefully not have them go through what I went through.
Hmm.
Meaning, I cannot stop their trauma because I cannot stop things that happen in their daily lives. But what I could do is be an ear, and I could give them tools and different things that they could use to make their lives maybe just a little bit easier and hopefully not lead them to the path that I took. And that was a disassociating and the poor choices and the criminal activity, because I wouldn't want anyone to go through that if they didn't have to. Turned out okay for me. But I am very regretful to my victims, and that is still a long, long road to hoe. And I don't think I'll forever be over that. But Connecting to Cope is a platform where I talk about trauma. I talk about um, the school pipeline to prison. Um, I do some advocacy, talk about justice reform, and I'm just there to help as a peer advocate and as a coach. If there are any questions in life, if you need a speaker,
Hmm.
that's what we do at Connecting to Cope. So.
Wow. So how can our listeners connect with you further, either through Connecting to Cope or other platforms if they'd like to do so?
Sure. So they can go to www.connectingtocope.com, and there's information to get a hold of me on there. There's also more of my story. This is very brief today,
Hmm.
and we can talk more about it if we need to. There's so many, avenues that we can speak to, but Connecting to Cope does tell a lot of the story and also the platforms and the different avenues that I took to get better. And hopefully that can help someone else avoid taking the same road that I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Ranae. It was a pleasure hearing even just a smidgen of your story. You are um, courageous, and your vulnerability is a lighthouse. So
Well, thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. And I hope that your mom is out there, Emily, that listen to you, and all your listeners. You have quite a few of them, and that is also a courageous platform to be on, because being a vulnerable mom is also really rough.
Hmm.
It's a rough road. There's a lot of bumps, there's a lot of potholes, but hopefully those moms out there appreciate your vulnerability and getting people on to talk about the different aspects of parenting that we all face in the world that we live in today. And so if there's anything we can do at Connecting to Cope to help any of those mamas, or if there's anything that we can do to help you personally, Emily, we'd be happy to help with that. So it was a pleasure today. It was short, it was brief. Usually
It was brief.
my
Yeah.
it was brief, and we can talk more if we want to. There's so many different aspects that we could take, but I think we got our point across. And again, if you have any more questions, feel free to ask me. I'm here. So
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Be sure to follow the podcast so new episodes land right in your feed each week. And if you're wondering what your next step toward calmer, more confident motherhood looks like, take my free Find your next step to calm a confidence quiz found in the show notes below. Until next time, Mama, mend the past so you can mama in peace.